Hi, I'm Jared Siegel. Welcome to BioDome. Today, we're going to be going over growing microgreens. Growing microgreens is a really simple process, and you're only going to need a couple of things. You're going to need water, nutrients, a tray of some sort, and a growing medium. Here we have rock wool. These are rock wool sheets. They're specifically made by Grodan, and they're made for actually growing microgreens. You could also use soil, you could use coco coir, really any sort of growing medium that you can put in the bottom of one of these trays will be really useful in order to start your microgreens. Then you'll need seeds of whatever your favorite herb or leafy green or whatnot that you'd like to have as a sprout. And then you'll need water and nutrients. And in 11 to 14 days, you too can have your very own microgreens at home. Let's get started here. In order to get your trays and your growing medium ready to take on seeds and plant for your microgreens, you're going to need to get it wet and acclimated to the proper pH level. So in order to do this, we'll have a bucket with some water here, and then we're going to add the amount of nutrients that we need into our water so that we can soak our rock wool for 24 to 48 hours before we seed it. You'll also want to do this if you're using coco coir, and if you're using soil, you may not need to wait the 24 to 48 hours, but it is always a good idea to allow it to soak up in order to make sure that it's at the proper pH as you move forward. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to take our nutrient solution, and for this 4-liter bucket here, we need exactly one of these eyedroppers worth of each of our 3-part nutrient solution, and that's going to get our pH level ready to soak the microgreens and not give them too much nutrients so that it burns their roots, but give them enough nutrients that they'll be able to sprout and grow quickly and healthily. And finally, for nutrient solution number 3. Now, let's go get this bucket filled up the rest of the way with water. Okay, now that we have our bucket full at 4 liters with the proper dilution, we can now take and start to soak our trays. We don't want to use too much water. We just want to make sure that the growing medium is fully covered, but we don't want to drown our roots. So we just want to make sure that we get, as you can see here with this one, the water is not coming up over it, but the entire thing is covered and it is soaked. And as you can see, that took maybe 2 liters of water or so, a little less than that, to fill up one of these rock wool trays. These are 10 by 20 trays, and you can find them pretty easily at any local hydroponics store. And so, yeah, easy to find, easy to use, great for at home if you'd like to use that. I'm going to go ahead and finish filling the rest of these. Okay, now we have all of our trays soaked and ready to go. So let's go ahead and put them in the BioDome. As you can see, there's still a little water running around the outside, but that's okay. Let's get these up here. As you can see, we've got some full spectrum lights here. And in just a couple of weeks, your microgreens will look something like this. This is a Boston butter lettuce right here, or a Bib lettuce. We've got micro basil and a micro Lola Rosa lettuce down there. Those are some of the things that we grow over here at BioDome. And here you can see all of our beautiful tomato plants that we have grown. The very last thing that we have to do here for our microgreens in terms of prepping the rock wool is we have to get our humidity domes on top of each one of the ones that we're soaking, and that will allow the humidity to start to build up in there so that when we actually get the plant seeds in, they'll be able to soak up that water and nutrients really quickly in order to be able to sprout and grow. As we can see here, we definitely want to have any of our vent holes completely closed. We do not want them to be in the open setting now because we are building up humidity. Once we start to see any amount of green from the plants, that's when we'll be ready to open up those vents. And then once we start to see leaves coming up and see them larger, that's when we'll want to take these domes off completely and the plants will be left more like this. Okay, here we are. It's the next day. As you see, we've gotten some pretty good humidity on the inside of these humidity bubbles for our microgreens trays here. And we are now ready to go. It's been 24 hours, so we can now start to put seeds in these and then they can start to grow into microgreens. Okay, I'm back. We've pulled all of our trays out of the BioDome and we've got them ready to start getting them seeded. So let's go through the process of what we're going to need to do in order to get the right amount of seeds to grow the proper density of microgreens so that they're not smothering each other and so that you're going to get enough that they'll actually grow and be the density and quality that you're looking for. So there are a couple of things that you're going to need for this. One, you're going to need your seeds. You can choose any herb that you would like to. Any variety of lettuce or broccolis work well. Cauliflower, anything that's not in the berry or nightshade variety will work for microgreens. I've even seen people do things such as cantaloupe, which actually comes out very sweet as a microgreen. You can also do pea shoots and other things along those lines. Really, we'll post a whole list of things that you can make into microgreens if you're looking for it. I think most people are going to be doing greens or greens mixes. Maybe cilantro or basil. Those typically turn out quite well, and they can add some oomph to your salads or sandwiches or anything it is that you're using. Additionally, a food scale is helpful. It's recommended. It will help you dose out the amount of microgreens, the seeds that you're actually going to put on the trays, but it's not needed. I'll show you roughly what it looks like when we measure it out, and then you can kind of get a feel for it. And if you want to, you can just eyeball it and sprinkle the seeds out on there. You want them to be covering the entire growing medium, but you don't want it to be too dense. I'll show you a little bit more as we move forward. We use a little spoon and measuring cup, and that's what's going to allow us to get our proper amount of microgreens for each individual tray. Alrighty, let's go ahead and get to start measuring. So the first thing we're going to need to do is we're going to need to zero out our scale with our measuring cup on top of it. We're going to be doing a couple of different things today. We'll do 2 varieties of lettuces or a greens mix, and then we'll be doing micro basil as well. We specifically get our seeds from Johnny Select Seeds. There are a couple other places online that provide wonderful organic quality seeds or greens mixes. We'll put a link in the description below if you're looking for places to go out and go buy seeds from. So I think the majority of people are going to be wanting to do some sort of a greens mix. In regards to greens mixes, for these 10 by 20 trays, we do a total of 10 grams worth of seeds per each tray. And these lettuce seeds, these are a bit larger than you'll see for the basil seeds. So these seeds right here, they cover a bit more area, and lettuce are a bit more densely packed when they start to grow. So we're going to measure out a nice 10 grams, and then we'll spread it out on the tray. So for folks at home, that was about 2 teaspoons worth of seeds that you're going to be using for a tray like this. And these were the ones that we prepped yesterday. They've now sat for 24 hours and the rock wool has acclimated to the proper pH that's needed in order to grow microgreens properly. And it's now soaked in all those nutrients so that your plant seeds can start to absorb it and sprout some roots. And that's going to make your microgreens process even faster as you go forward. So we're just going to take these seeds and we're going to do a nice little sprinkle, making sure that we get as much of the surface area covered as possible, but we don't want them to be too densely over top of each other. Just spread them out, nice and thin layer over the course of the bottom. And if we're seeing any areas that we're missing, we definitely want to get all the way around the edges. And if you mess it up, you can always take your hands and spread it out just a little bit more if you feel it needs more spreading. But this right here is roughly what it looks like when it's all spread out. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to get a label on here to show when we're starting it, what it is, and that will let us know when we can actually go and harvest. Lettuces, greens mixes, you're looking at somewhere between 11 and 14 days until they're fully grown. So next, we're going to do basil, because basil is going to be slightly different for this. What we're going to need to do for basil, since we have a much smaller seed size, I don't know if you guys can see that in there, but those are significantly smaller than the lettuce seeds. So these are going to take 15 grams per 10 by 20 tray. So we'll measure that out. And this will be the case with any of the smaller seeds that you see. Bigger seeds will need less of them to cover the surface area. That's just basic math. So as you can see here, we've got that nicely covered, and it's ready to go back in the BioDome once it gets covered back up with the humidity dome. So now that you have beautiful microgreens, right here we've got Lola Rosa lettuce. It's a purple lettuce, so you can start to see some of those purple leaves coming in here for the microgreens. Now you're going to want to be able to harvest them. So if you're using rock wool like what we use, they just slide out. You just got to be able to get in underneath of it, and the whole thing just slides out like that, and that will allow you to be able to trim it pretty easily. If you're using soil or coco coir, a different form of growing medium that's loose and not densely packed like rock wool is, you will probably have to just take a pair of scissors or a trimmer or something and go in and trim it from inside of the actual tray. So all we're going to need really is a pair of scissors. You got one of those at home probably, or pruning shears. Those work as well. And then you need a little something that you can put it in. We use something that uses some mesh, because that way some of the excess seeds and roots can kind of fall through, and that way you aren't really eating those when you eat your microgreens. The seeds and the roots are definitely edible though. They're healthy for you. It's just based on personal preference whether you want them in or not. Harvesting for a rock wool, we're going to get underneath, grab our slab. We can see some nice roots underneath, and then just start to pull the slab out. This is what I found the easiest way to be to get the most possible microgreens. And like I said, just take a scissors or pruning shears. Pruning shears work just about the same way. And then they can go nicely into your bucket. over here where you're collecting them. You can also rip them out, but sometimes you tend to get some rock wool or some other growing medium with it if you do it like that. So I highly recommend just going through and snipping little bits. If you're using a different type of growing medium like soil or coco coir, it's going to be stuck in the bottom of here. The hardest part is getting the starting point because you have to kind of choose a corner and just go in. But once you get there, you can just grab, and it should be easy enough to just trim and pull right out. The best way to store your microgreens once they've been harvested. So for us, we found that the best way to store these is just to take a little damp paper towel and put it on both sides of your microgreens. As you can see here, some of these microgreens still do have roots, and so this damp paper towel is actually going to help keep them alive. And then seal them up in a nice plastic bag, and they can sit in your refrigerator, and depending on the type of microgreen, they'll last between 1 and 2 weeks after your harvest when stored like this.